think that's a little better.
Coming up, the New York Football Giants get a storm from behind victory last second drive. It's making it happen for Big Blue. It's plays all over the field. It's the defense doing what it's done for the last month of the season, forcing turnovers. We drive in. Coming up next. Yes, sir. It's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where you know that we are your hosts. Over here, Adam Armbrecht. Over there, Andy Makowitz. And it is the classic Victory Tuesday for Big Blue. They get the win at home, underdogs, 24-22. Last second field goal from, you guessed it, Randy Bullock. The little bowling ball that could still get his foot to swing and put this thing through the uprights. We're going to talk about some of the big key moments here. Obviously, we're going to update what it looks like from a playoff perspective, what it looks like from a draft perspective, violent shifting moments here, depending on which segment of the fan base you're in. But at the top of it, Andy, it's all about Tommy DeVito, who put together a really solid game and then also critical drives, including the last one. Like, whatever he is or is not going to be as an NFL quarterback, he was a game-winning quarterback last night for the New York Football Giants.
I mean, the NFL must be so happy that Tommy DeVito came into their lives, because you have a major New York market. He feels like him and his family fill the Tony Soprano situation. They're showing the family tailgating in the parking lot, making chicken cutlet heroes. They every 2 seconds, his agent is playing it up, wearing the most ridiculous outfit I've ever seen. Like he's a hustler on the street corner.
Yeah,
I mean,
like everyone understands this human being does not walk around wearing that in any other time of his life until this happened for Tommy DeVito.
of course. I mean, he's a guy from Massachusetts too. Like his agent is from Massachusetts. Like, come on, like
He's got a Boston accent.
but
He's Dave Gettleman, right? Like he's got this weird thick. Sorry, go ahead.
but listen, this is a feel good story. They played up the
Course it
Italian
is.
thing. They show the family. Like, if you can't enjoy this for a hot second as a Giants fan, then you're not really a fan. Like, the season has not gone the way that we have wanted it to. Tommy DeVito has injected life. He's not super arrogant. Like, you see him in the post game. He's like, this is a kid's game. I'm just trying to stay composed, and like they're letting me do what we need to do. So, like, in the macro, like the higher level thing, this is just a great feel good story for the Giants. It's injected life into the fan base. The team seems to be rallying around him. They're all doing like the little Tommy DeVito touchdown celebration. To me, the overall story is amazing. And they do all this buildup about Tommy DeVito before the game.
Yeah.
And Adam, he delivered. He delivered. He played well. And so you can't take any of this away from him. He was a reason why the Giants won the game, not just a guy that was there for the whole entire ride of the game.
Come on, Andy. Say the phrase you love. He was a force multiplier last night for the New York Football Giants.
He was. I mean, Adam, listen. When you think about it, you may say, "Oh, he only threw for 158 yards," but he had an 81.7 quarterback rating. He was 17 of 21 passing. He had 113 passer rating, but he also used his legs so well. The second he felt pressure and the offensive line was collapsing, he just took off. He took off and ran to make sure that he could get positive plays. Did not get sacked in the entire game. Had 10 rushes for 71 yards. And it felt like a lot of those rushes were in key critical moments to keep some of these drives going, sustain some drives. I mean, there's no way around it. He was great in this game.
No, listen, it's funny, man, because you could see the Green Bay Packers. I mean, Tommy DeVito is excellent. And by the way, you said 10 carries, 71 yards rushing the football here. And because he's an undersized quarterback, but because he's small in stature, like he runs like as close to a running back as a quarterback can run, right? This isn't like flashy elusiveness. This is just, I'm quick enough. I can step up through the pocket. And you saw gradually over the course of the game, every single time when the pressure was coming, it was incremental step ups. We always talk about keeping your eyes downfield, looking for the plays. But then when they weren't there, go ahead and give me the 5 yards, give me the 6 yards, then the big 20+ yard run, which, by the way, almost could have been. We're going to talk about Saquon Barkley later. A second thing that he did poorly in this game was block Tommy DeVito from getting into the end zone, because I had anytime touchdown for Tommy D. Didn't get there on that. But it was smart football. It was error-free football. You mentioned the QBR here. It really just put together the kind of game that you didn't listen. Did I think the Giants? We both picked the Giants to win this game outright, by the way. And we said it was going to be on the strength of the defense. And we'll talk about them because it was about the defense in this game as well. But having Tommy DeVito be able to orchestrate several key drives along the way is the only way that the Giants are able to win this game, even with as well as the defense played. And when you go and look, this really to me is about the third quarter. As much as that final drive, getting into field goal range, very methodical, 5 for 5 on that drive for Tommy DeVito, by the way, they came out. They came out in the third quarter and had back-to-back touchdown drives. The Giants scored 14 points in a single quarter. And that, again, came on the strength of Tommy DeVito, timely passes. They took a lot of underneath stuff. We'll get to Wan'Dale Robinson here. Maybe that's who we go to next. There were a lot of big step-up plays. With everything being considered here, before we talk about everybody else, I thought you could say the long run that was almost a touchdown. But I thought that touchdown pass to Isaiah Hodgins, the forgotten man, who when Kim Jones asked Brian Dable, he goes, yeah, listen, it's a part of the system. That's the result sometimes. We go, come on, knock it off, Brian. You're a liar. It almost feels like he went out of his way to get Isaiah Hodgins a touchdown here. But that was a evade pressure, roll out, throw on the run, and he high points a perfect spiral back at the end zone for Isaiah Hodgins. Like that to me was the snapshot of the game for Tommy.
It was. And you know what? Kudos to Brian Dable and Mike Kafka, because what they also realized personnel-wise was that the Giants' offensive line was not holding up amazing. It felt like Tommy DeVito had to escape the pocket constantly, whether it was to run the ball or to just evade the rush to give himself more time to throw. And so what they said was, let's see a little bit more Isaiah Hodgins, especially as we get closer to the red zone. Maybe we're going to put Jalen Hyatt on ice because he's just not the deep threat kind of game today, especially in the cold weather and the wind. So they got Isaiah Hodgins in the red zone ready to go. You're exactly right. That throw was awesome. I mean, when you see the behind the view behind Tommy DeVito, he places that ball only where Isaiah Hodgins can get it, to the outside, and also just inside the pylon to give Isaiah Hodgins a chance to get his feet down. Everything about that play was amazing. That one to me, I think we would both agree, was his best throw. But his second best throw was basically the game clinching throw to Wan'Dale Robinson, where he, the whole game is on the line there. There's under a minute to go, and he looks and he fires a perfect ball to Wan'Dale Robinson to allow him to turn and get up the field to get the yards to put them in field goal range. I mean, listen, here's a question that I have for you. I want to know, when does the Tommy DeVito fun story become a Tommy DeVito question of like, how capable can he be? Can he be the backup on this team? Can he be something more? Like when does the fun and like the niceties end at him and we actually have a serious conversation about him?
Oh, no. Asked and answered. He can be the backup quarterback for this team. Listen, barring him absolutely flatlining over the remaining schedule or something, right? And some of these teams, the Rams, the Eagles, you're going to see the Saints are a really good defense. So that's going to be an interesting game to look at. Obviously, coming up next on the Giants schedule. So, yeah, there's a world where he falls flat on his face. But again, this is that incremental growth here. They asked him to do a little bit more. Now, you can go back and look at a lot of these plays. I said it. A lot of underneath stuff, a lot of out routes. There's a world where Green Bay in this game was saying, our agenda is we're not going to give up Jalen Hyatt deep, right? We're not giving you a big explosive play. And I think that's probably the last question for Tommy DeVito is, does he have deep playability, right? Can he stretch the field against the defense? Does he have that downfield accuracy? He hooked up with Jalen Hyatt a week ago for over 100 yards. We know that. But those type of moments, play action pass. But overall, no, come on. You're going into next year, barring, I said, an absolute disaster. You're going into next season saying Tommy DeVito in training camp is trying to lock up that backup quarterback spot. It's why you started him this week over Tyrod Taylor. You know that he'll be gone 100% as we see Jay Mazzella. You might sound like a little bit of Italian in the background there too. Good for you. He has proven that he can be a QB2 for this team already. Now I just think it's about where would you rank him if he has a really successful rest of the year and then you go into the off season. We could be talking about, is he the top half of backup quarterbacks, maybe even a little bit better? That's going to be a really nice security blanket, knowing that you may not have Daniel Jones to start the year next season. He may still be recovering from injury. It's unclear. That would put Tommy DeVito in a position to start games for the Giants next season. You have to feel more confident now saying, hey, we can give him the ball and not look at it as, Is he going to be able to succeed? No, he's proving he can be successful against the team, by the way, in the Green Bay Packers, beat Detroit, beat Kansas City, right? This is a team that's been trying to ramp themselves up. Jordan Love, we'll get to the defense, but first quality opponent that he took on, I would say, on the schedule in all phases and got that big win.
Adam, when we're shifting away from Tommy DeVito, we know he's the main story. We know his family, everything else is the main story. When we're specifically on the offense, I had two notes. One is this might have been Wan'Dale Robinson's best game as a New York Giant. I know he didn't get in the end zone, but it felt like he was the possession receiver. He was rushing the ball, picking up yards. He made an unbelievable catch on the sideline that I think he baited Matt LaFleur into challenging the play, pretending like he didn't know if he caught it or not. He played really well, and he was kind of the security blanket for Tommy DeVito all night.
And not only that, remember, that's on the right side of the field, to your point, and maybe baiting him in a little bit. Left side of the field, when they had the linebacker on him, this was probably the deepest pass I think that Tommy DeVito threw. And I'm not going to say that it was a perfect ball, but it was a linebacker on a fast wide receiver. The safety had to try to close the gap there. Wan'Dale Robinson gets himself elevated, comes back and makes that play over by NFL standards, less athletic, in quotes, defender. Really big play there as well. So as you mentioned, no touchdown for Wan'Dale Robinson in this game, but you go inside that box score and you see he has 6 catches for 79 yards, a 13.2 average, 7 targets there. So caught almost every single ball thrown his way, long of 32. And ultimately, to me, it's about, we're now highlighting 3 clutch moments. He gets the big catch on the right sideline, baits the challenge. He gets the linebacker catch on the left sideline. And then you mentioned as well, he actually had, I was about to undersell this. He also had the jet sweep run when it's the backfield and Saquon Barkley orchestrates that play that gets them down near the goal line before Saquon scores his first touchdown. And then the big clutch play on the closing drive. This was, as much as we're talking about Tommy DeVito, this is probably that next step of realization that Wan'Dale Robinson can go out and make plays, and it doesn't need to be elite number 1 on the field and then he gets the scraps. He went out there and made plays, understanding a little bit of a depleted secondary, certainly for Green Bay.
Yeah, and when you move away from the wide receiver core, before we switch over to the defense and overall what this looks like, you got to talk about Saquon Barkley. Obviously, They fed him the rock. He had 20 carries. He had, I mean, listen, it felt like a lot of good, a lot of bad, and it feels like a little bit of a mixed bag at the end. 20 carries for 86 yards, 4.3 yards per carry. And you may say, well, that's pretty decent. But like with 7 minutes to go in the game, he only had like 25, 26 yards, broke off a nice 17-yard run, scored 2 touchdowns in the game, Adam. Obviously kept him in the game. I highlighted that they were going to give him the rock at least 20 times. They did that. I said he was going to have over 70 yards, which was his over under. He did that. But then he has like an un-Saquon like fumble after he makes the big play, which kept the Packers in the game. You could see how dejected he was on the sideline. He did everything he could to gain those grimy yards, as you'd like to say, just trying to get something going, knowing that the Packer defense was focusing in on him. So you had the good where he scores 2 touchdowns and he's getting some of the hard yards. You have the good where he has the explosive play to get them down the field. But then that fumble literally could have cost the Giants a game and potentially, aspirations for the rest of the season.
Yeah, man, it's kind of brutal because everything up until he had 2 big runs, including the one where he fumbles the ball. There was 1 big break off on that same drive. So the bulk, I mean, I think he had under 30 yards rushing before he had 2 big chunk plays. One went for over 30 unto itself, and that got him up over 80 yards at 86 for the game, right? So you see that and you go, again, well, if not for those 2 big runs, but reflecting over the course of his career and this season, that really is what Saquon has been. He's a grind, and then have the big home run play. It's because he's that talented that you can get to that place. We also know the offensive line hasn't been great, right? There's plenty of rushing plays here where Saquon Barkley is trying to go east and west and north and south, and he's getting met 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I'll make one really quick note here. On that final drive, the game-winning drive, whether you want to say it's play calling, I can also say that Saquon Barkley did a lot of dancing on that second down play that took them from a 2nd and 4, made it a 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9, and then they had to gain those few yards back to make it a 4th and 6 before they kicked that field goal. I think maybe the weight of what it's been to be Saquon Barkley on the New York Giants over the years now, there's a lot of pressure there, and he wants to be the home run hitter. He wants to be the playmaker. The play down the right sideline is awkward. He regathers himself, but he gets tripped up and then sets his feet again. So there's kind of this going, stumbling down to the finish line there. You got to protect that football, man. And I don't know what the story is that we're telling. If that fumble happens and the Packers go on to win that game without Saquon Barkley, you're not necessarily in the position to win this one with even the other big run. Take that one off the board. Like, you knew you were going to need a couple of those plays. I'll be honest, man. It was a really mixed bag. We're not going to stay sour note here too long, but that's a really mixed bag because you only have to go back a handful of weeks. He had that fumble inside the 5 for the Giants as well. He only has 3 lost fumbles in his career. And yet, I don't know. Like, we'll talk about this another day, but there's a little bit like big spot moment. Saquon has a little bit of maybe like, squeezing the ball too tight, right? So worried about not making the mistake that you make the mistake. It was brutal. Ends up not being the narrative of this game, but could have very much been a huge spotlight on him.
Yeah, we talk about Tommy DeVito leading the team down the field after the Saquon fumble. Obviously, the offense did what they needed to do. Minutes ago, they told Tommy DeVito, just get out there and rip it, and let's see what happens. And it paid off. And it was tough off of the Saquon Barkley fumble. Jordan Love goes down, leads his team to what could have been a game-winning touchdown drive. But honestly, Adam, you look at the Giants defense, which is where we're going to turn it over to next. Outside of that play, they played fantastic. The Giants defense was really, really good in this game. And it may not seem it. You may say, oh, well, they gave up in the 20s. It's like, well, when you look at the Nick McLeod fumble, you look at the Saquon Barkley fumble, you look at a few areas where the Packers ended up getting a short field. Like, there's only so much that you can do. I thought the Giants defense was outside of Tommy DeVito, the story of the game.
Yeah, it was very interesting, man. 25 of 39 for Jordan Love, 5.6 yards per pass, a touchdown, an interception. You mentioned the turnovers that the Giants defense was able to force. If not for, again, the Packers, really special teams, they kept short punting. And I don't think, not intentionally, they kept kind of having errors on their punts. And that's why it ended up bouncing off McLeod and giving them a short field. A 56 QBR in this game. I say this all the time, man. I think teams come in and just maybe they don't know what to make of the Giants because of the record. The defense has been good, but is that because the team you played or the game script favored them at times? They've had a lot of turnovers more recently, which has obviously been really good and really important for them. But you go in and look at this. Now, they had no Aaron Jones in this game. They had no Christian Watson. So that makes a difference here. You can't stretch the field as much, and you don't have necessarily the same dynamic in the backfield. But 15 carries for A.J. Dillon, 53 yards, and 3.5. I think he averages 3.4 on the season. So right on point. But when you look over and see Taylor, who came in for just 4 carries and had 30 yards, Jaden Reed, 4 carries for 38 yards, using wide receivers like the Giants did. Wan'Dale Robinson, just to be clear, had 2 carries for 36 yards there in the running game for the Giants. It's like sometimes, and it's results oriented, but you go, well, hey, thanks, guys. Because you did a little bit of a favor here. Having Jordan Love throw the ball 39 times in a game like this, the game was never out of reach. It was always a one-possession game throughout. So there's never a need where you need to lose balance. And we said time and again, the Giants can get beat up in the run game sometimes. We saw some gash plays in this game, but they didn't stick with it. Jordan Love was inaccurate. I think he has the highest off-target percentage coming into that game last night of 17%, even though he's been better and going in the right direction. It's not a knock on him. That's an area of development. He missed guys high and wide. Some of those out routes were off target, and it was just let him get behind the game script a little bit. I think the Giants held him under 30% on third downs. They're 45% on the season. It's all these little things. And as the game is going on, every little moment, like you go, oh, that's another moment. That's another moment. So that's everything on Jordan Love and where he struggled a little bit. Then purely Giants defense. It was all getting done there. Couple of critical moments along the way. I thought Banks played really well. Thibodeau made some nice adjustments in terms of taking a long route to the quarterback versus a spin move. That's where he met Jordan Love down towards the goal line there on a short play, looking to scramble, shut that down. Just a lot of really nice key moments for this defense, 100%.
Deonte Banks had 12 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 pass defended. He had that really good play in the end zone where he batted it away, where it looked like he could have been beat. He played awesome. It's not very regularly that your cornerback is leading your team in tackles on the day. But you're right. The key to me in this whole game was red zone defense for the Giants. When you look at the metrics, Adam, the Green Bay Packers went 2 of 5 in the red zone. The Giants went 3 of 4. And that really, to me, is the difference. Like, Tommy DeVito made that clutch throw to Isaiah Hodgins. Saquon Barkley did what he needed to do to get the tough yards. And it felt like the Green Bay Packers had opportunities to really get ahead and have Tommy DeVito play from behind. And they were settling for field goals or field goal attempts. And it just didn't feel like they really were ever getting anything going. So kudos to the defense for bending and not breaking, especially given all of those turnovers. To me, that was the difference in the game. The Giants better in the red zone. The Giants less turnovers, even with the Saquon Barkley turnover. And that's really what ended up winning the game. Now, I will say one thing.
By the way, really quick, at one point, the Giants, when the Giants had 21, I can't remember where the Packers were at that moment. It was 3 for 3 touchdown red zone drives for the Giants, 1 for 3 touchdown drives in the red zone for the Packers. So it's all about converting, right? And then we've done this. We've lived this experience. Field goals instead of touchdowns. And then all of a sudden you're in the third quarter and you go, well, we only have 9 points. Like, we should have had 17. We should have had 14, whatever it is. You don't get there. And that was, again, another game script note that really went the Giants' way. So anybody else you want to shout out here on the defensive side before we just talk a little bit big picture?
No, I wanted to shift to one more thing. I know we don't want to talk about negative too much after a good win and everyone's excited. We'll get into the bigger picture. But Adam, special teams has been an issue all year. Special teams has been an abject failure all season. And yes, I know Graham Gano is currently hurt. He's our Pro Bowl kicker. But when you look at all of the critical errors and mistakes that the special teams made in this game, they easily could have cost the Giants the entire game. And I'll just give you 3 examples.
Okay.
1, Randy Bullock misses a field goal from like 38 yards.
No, that's 48. It's a 48-yarder.
48 yards. I mean, in this day and age, though, you still should be making these kicks. Wasn't really particularly close.
At his day and his age? No, but
I mean, he's out there playing.
He's out
right?
there. I
so
know
like,
he's out. Okay, real quick, and I agree with you, but just real quick. I had not seen, he's been with the Giants. This is his 5th game. And he's now 8 for 14 on fourth quarter, under 2 minutes or overtime, game-changing field goal kicks to take a lead in the game for his team. When I saw him on the sideline, he looks like a long snapper. He's wearing 46. I know. He's the short, stocky. He's got a beer gut. Like, I mean, this is Randy Bullock hanging on by a thread here. And I was like, when they were getting down the field for that, I just thought, oh, this is why I missed the field goal. Can he even swing his leg? Nevertheless, got the win. Go ahead.
Oh, so listen, that was one critical error. The second critical error in all this was Lawrence Cager at the end of the first half. The ball is going out of bounds.
That one was absolutely
get it at the 40-yard line. That is pure discipline and coaching. You have to tell him, make sure that the other team doesn't recover it, but you cannot touch the ball if it's potentially going out of bounds. I know there was only like 15 seconds left, 20 seconds left on the clock, but you have to let that go out of bounds so that the Giants get it at the 40 and you have an opportunity to do something with it.
And this is what he was telling him on the sidelines, you establish yourself out of bounds and then you field that ball. That is the equivalent. If you establish out, Lawrence Cager did none of those things. He, for some weird reason, moved towards the football as it was going. It's like, you don't need to. I mean, you're 100% right, but just there's this, that wrinkle of what you can do. But like, you don't need to monitor this thing. Now, the players are coming. So you can do any number of things. If you want to grab that ball, right? Like grab the ball and fall forward for 5 yards, fine. If you want to establish yourself out of bounds and grab that thing, fine. But it's like Cager, unfortunately, ends up being the ire of this. It's like he gets caught in this no man's land where he's like, maybe I'm going to touch it. Maybe I'm not. I know the team is coming. I don't want them to get near it. And he just didn't commit to any decision, right? He allowed the ball to play him, as they say.
Then the other critical error is that the ball hits Nick McLeod on a punt that ends up short, where no one should be anywhere around that ball. Like Gunnar Olszewski needs to make sure everyone's gone. They need to be teaching, like, the second that happens, you get out of the way. Adam, I know that you may say, well, no, a missed field goal. How is that someone's fault? Oh, like this play out of bounds. How's that his fault? Oh, like what a fluke. It hit off one of the guys running down the field on a punt. Like, this is what, like, you have a coach that is specifically designed to make sure that these things do not happen or eliminate them as much as possible. That's 3 errors. If it's 1 and you're like, oh, that's such a fluky play, I'd be fine with it. It's just noteworthy that it's been an issue. It's been the Giants' thorn in their side all season long. It almost reared its ugly head again in this game, knowing how well the defense played and how good Tommy DeVito did. You left points on the board potentially in different areas. You gave points up to the Packers. It's one area where we still got to get things right in order for this team to do anything for the rest of the season.
Yeah, like I said, you can look at that punt and say, "Well, he kicks a weird short punt." It's like McLeod. Why would this ball be 15 yards shorter than normal anticipation? But it still hits him, and it still happens, and communication isn't there. The Cager play, the missed field goal. I think it's like you can explain away one or two of those things, but because it's been the theme, that's why you can't. Right? At some point, the theme becomes the trend that becomes the reality, and special teams has been a problem now for multiple seasons. So 100%. We don't have to trend too negative, but again, nothing was perfect here. The Giants still have some things that they're going to need to clean up. And I'm sure, listen, Brian Dable, to his credit, by the way, in the post-game press conference, it sounded strikingly similar to when they lose games. Like he wasn't overstating anything and trying to make good plays, trying to be productive. There will be things that they need to clean up. The other thing then that we want to get to here, Andy, if you're ready for it, is the playoff picture, the tankathon, the draft, all these things. I'm going to start with the fun one, which is just tankathon, because there's a certain segment of the fan base that doesn't love this. But by the way, the Giants were sitting there just behind the Commanders there in the 5th spot. They dropped all the way to 8th, behind the Bears, behind the Raiders, behind the Jets. The Titans are behind them. The Chargers are behind them. But next week when they go to play the Saints, they can flip that again, and they could drop themselves all the way to 12th if they were to end up getting a win down the road against the Rams. Like, the Giants can move very quickly out of this thing. And obviously, if we're talking about that NFL playoff picture, it's not going to matter because you're going to be well outside of it. Things haven't broke perfectly for them in terms of other games, but as it stands right now, the only thing you can do, as Andy has said, is win the games in front of you. The Giants have now won 3 straight, and while they are still in 12th position here, they got themselves back ahead of the Bears, and they're 1 game behind the Saints, behind the Falcons, behind the Seahawks, behind the Rams, and behind the team they just beat, the Green Bay Packers, for that final wild card spot.
Adam, they're in this thing. As much as people don't want to admit it, they are. Until they lose one more game,
and that's what it is, right? That's what it is, though. It's like they're in it. The second they lose a game, they are out of it. But you still have to lose that game, and other things have to happen around as well.
Right. They were underdogs against the Patriots. They won that game. They were almost a touchdown underdog against the Packers. They won that game. The defense is playing well right now. The New Orleans Saints have a wonderful defense. Derek Carr is not good. He has like 12 broken ribs. Their offense looks broken. He can't throw the ball down the field. They have injuries all over the place. The reality is, when the Giants were 2-8 and everyone felt like you cannot win another game, you have to do everything in your power to not win a game. Adam, the last month of the season has felt fun. Like, hasn't it been fun waking up after a Giants win and being able to talk with everyone about it, get excited about the fact that players are looking good. Wan'Dale Robinson's developing. We found a backup quarterback. And like, we don't know. We talk about in our last show, we don't know if Marvin Harrison is even coming out in the draft. Things change every single week in terms of like who's going to be there and what's going to happen. That's why I don't focus on the tankathon stuff. It's like, once the Giants start losing and we start preparing for next season, sure, I get it. But right now, if the Giants win out, they're in the playoffs. They have a 90-something% chance if they win their remaining games. I know they're difficult. If they win those games, they can. So why would you not want them to win every game that's in front of them? That's what doesn't make sense.
Okay, hold on. I agree with everything about what you're saying. And it's okay to look something at the tankathon and to get excited about players, like just to have a sense of who's out there, right? But I agree with you about is the games in front of you. That 90% thing is not real. The 90% thing is about if the Giants win every game and everything breaks for them the right way, they have a chance to make the playoffs. 100%.
You are incorrect on this one.
Because no, I'm not. That is completely untrue, because I've already done the math on this. If you're sitting there, even the Green Bay Packers right now, if the Green Bay Packers get to 8-9, well, then the Giants at 8-9 would have the win over them. Like, I went and crunched all of these playoff numbers around like what every single team has to do in order for the Giants to do it, in order for the Giants to accomplish this. Like, I ran off a scenario, and it's funny because I actually thought this would be an enjoyable one to take a look at. If you look at, and gosh, I hope I still have it in here, otherwise it's going to be a problem. I'll do it on the fly here. When you look at the schedule, the Packers, okay, they just need to go 8-9, and the Giants have the head-to-head. Assuming the Giants beat the Rams, they go 8-9, they have the head-to-head. Assuming the Giants beat the Saints, 8-9, they have the head-to-head. The problem that they're going to run into is, first, from a Vikings perspective, though that's the second wild card spot, they have a great conference strength of schedule, so they won't be able to go to the head-to-head on that scenario. And then teams like the Seahawks and teams like the Falcons, if they are at the same record, they can end up losing on the head-to-head in those scenarios. So you're talking about the Giants need to go undefeated And then 3 out of the other 4 teams in their way, out of the 6 teams in their way, have to go 1 win, have to go 2 wins at best. So it's not a 90% chance if they win out. It's a 90% chance if they win out and the other teams lose more than they win.
No, so Adam, I mean, maybe we're trying to say the same thing, but I'm gonna put it very succinctly for you. If the Giants are not going to be favored basically in any game they play, right? We
True.
understand that they've got the Eagles twice, they've
True.
got the Saints and the Rams.
I'll be
We
very curious about
understand.
the Saints line. I'll be curious about that one. That's like an interesting one.
I can tell you what it is in a moment because I
Oh,
already
good.
I already
Yeah, the
looked it
early
up
line out. Nice.
just to kind of understand what's going on. So put it this way: the Giants are not favored in any of their games. They have a
Right.
0.2%, 2%, 0.2% chance of even making the playoffs. Everyone knows that it would be miraculous for them to go undefeated.
Of course.
If the Giants win their last 4 games, they will be at 9-8. If every other game based on the spread, the favorite wins those games, the Giants have a 95% chance to make the playoffs. So what I'm saying is the Giants have to do the unexpected and the expected has to happen everywhere else. The Giants would have a overwhelmingly good chance to make the playoffs. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying yes, if randomly the Seahawks go out and they win games that they're not favored in, or all of a sudden Atlanta reels off 3 games but then like does something else, like yes, I understand those things can happen, but the likelihood if the Giants do the miraculous on their own, it looks like the Giants have the ability to get that 7 seed. That's all.
I guess, yeah, and we'll talk about this another day, but Atlanta plays Carolina, Chicago, Indy, and New Orleans to remain their season. So you need them to at best go 8-9. They need to lose. They need to beat Carolina. Like, this is the reasonable. Beat Carolina, maybe beat Chicago, lose to Indy, lose to New Orleans, then you're there. They lose the 3rd game, okay, great. Same thing. Green Bay plays Carolina, Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Chicago. You need that thing to balance out and keep somebody in the NFC South title. The Rams, Washington, New Orleans, New York, San Francisco. That seems kind of maybe favorable unless San Francisco's locked it up or if they haven't locked it up. Like, I get what you're saying, man. The bottom line is
It's a pipe dream,
at the
but it's good
end
to dream.
of
It's good to
the
dream.
day, this was an excellent win for the New York Football Giants. We got a little bit, and I saw this coming. We're doing it live. We appreciate everybody in on the YouTube having the conversation with us. I knew we'd get in the weeds about this. We'll come back in and talk about this more separately. Let's just take the last couple of minutes here to remind everybody. It was a 24-22 victory for the New York Football Giants over the Green Bay Packers, a game where they trailed 7-0, a game where they trailed 10-7 at half. And then in the 3rd quarter, in the second half, they won the second half, right? That's something that the Giants have had a hard time doing, closing out games, coming from behind. And a big scenario that played itself out here was, can you respond with critical drives when they matter? I thought Mike Kafka and the coaching staff offensively, 2 quality drives in the 3rd quarter. Then, really, I'll be honest with you, man, that fumble, I was doing this live on PSF watching the game. It took me like 5 minutes to physically recover because it just felt like that was it. That was you're up 21 to what? You're up 8 points at that point. And then the Packers take the field goal and you're like, 5-point game. Is that enough? Is it whatever? They score and you go, that's exactly the problem here. Then you had that crazy, by the way, play on the 2-point conversion where you're like, is that in or out? Or no, sorry, the previous play going for the touchdown where it's like, did he catch that? Slow motion, you think, oh, he definitely caught that. Real time, you go, no. He swatted that out. Pinnock did a great job swatting that one out. Like, all of those little moments that unfolded there, it led to an somewhat improbable Giants victory. I'll be very fascinated to watch the rest of the Packers season because they were riding high. And now the next thing you do, reset yourself, prepare for the Saints, because next week, another win, depending on how it breaks, maybe we're talking about a 99.9% chance for the Giants to make the playoffs.
I mean, listen, as you mentioned, at the end of the day, before this game, the Giants had only beaten the Patriots, the Cardinals, and the Commanders twice, who all
This is the first
had less
quality
wins
victory
than
on
the
this game.
Giants. They all had less wins than the Giants. They were all drafting in the top 5 of the NFL draft, right?
Yeah.
This was the first time, if the playoffs started today, the Packers would be the 7th seed. This is the first time that the Giants showed fight against a team that has a better record than them, that looks to be, have bigger aspirations for the playoffs. So it's nice to absorb that, take the win, be happy with the way the Giants performed, and just leave that door open. Just a crack, Adam, to say the rest of the season can be meaningful. It doesn't mean it will be. It doesn't mean it has to be. But at least for another week, we have a game where we can say, win the next one in front of you, and then do the Michael Jordan shrug. We're like, I don't know. Like, let's see where the chips fall.
Beefanito, Barry, J-Maz before, everybody coming in. Steve there as well. Everyone's throwing him up. Everybody's throwing him up. A little bit of the Hey Italiano for you. And it is, by the way, I kind of love the fact that the Giants had 2 turnovers in the game and still won, because otherwise you'd say 3 turnovers to none. Well, that's the only way this team can win games. No, they made some mistakes. And we're still able to overcome them. 24-22, last second field goal from Randy Bullock wins it on a 5-for-5 game-winning drive from Tommy DeVito. Coming up, we will be the rest of this week starting to look ahead to the Saints. We'll go back into these playoff scenarios. I did paint the picture, by the way. I just did the more realistic thing, 8-9. The Giants could still make the playoffs at 8-9 if certain things go their way. So we'll get into that discussion. We'll update, as was pointed out in the chat. Saquon Barkley did get slammed to the ground really hard early in this game, managed to stay in it as well. So we'll break down some of the ins and outs, things to clean up, and also look at that Saints matchup. That's a good defense. That's an offense that has some weapons. How do the Giants prepare on another week where, once again, the season remains alive? In the meantime, friends, you get over to YouTube at One Giant Podcast. Help support this little engine that could. You get over to YouTube there. You do it on Twitter as well, at AndyMac214, at Adam Arbrecht, at One Giant Podcast, the podcast feed, wherever you get your needs fulfilled. Until next time, guys, gosh darn it, on a Victory Tuesday, as Andrew Makowitz would want, need, and nay. Demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.